Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard. Welcome to the edition of the Pan-African Pyramid Show. This is the People's Pan-African Parliament that sits every Friday from 5 to 8 p.m. here at Fair Hotel. Those of you who are following us live on social media platforms, we are live in Kampala at Fairway Hotel, and this show runs on NBS television on Saturday from 4 to 5. Your speaker is Andrew Irumba Atsani.
Sudan, South Sudan, the world's youngest nation, gained independence in 2011 with great hope for prosperity and self-determination. However, instead of much anticipated peace, the country quickly descended into one of Africa's most devastating conflicts, fueled by political rivalries, ethnic tensions, and power struggles. Ladies and gentlemen, the civil war, which erupted in December 2013, pitted President Salvar Kiir's government forces and against those loyal to his former Vice President, Dr. Riek Machar. What began as a political dispute within the ruling SPLM party soon escalated into a full-scale ethnic conflict, drawing in external actors, armed factions, and foreign interests. Over the years, dear comrades, we have witnessed 5 peace agreements, ceasefires, and collapse before the ink dries, and a humanitarian catastrophe affecting millions. While efforts like the revitalized peace agreement of 2018 brought some level of stability, the underlying tensions, armed skirmishes, and governance disputes persist. The continued presence of militias, rebel factions, and external influences keeps the country on the edge, making the dream of lasting peace seem elusive. Today we are privileged to have a distinguished panel of experts who will help us break down the root causes, the key players, and the possible pathways to peace in South Sudan. We will explore the internal power struggles, who are the main actors and what fuels their rivalries, the role of ethnicity and historical grievances. Is it a political war, or is it ethnicity being weaponized? The impact of regional and international players, are foreign interests prolonging the conflict, possible solutions and the way forward, what must be done for lasting peace in South Sudan. As we begin this discussion, ladies and gentlemen, let us remember that Africa's strength lies in its unity. The crisis in South Sudan is not just a South Sudanese problem. It is a Pan-African issue that affects regional stability, economic growth, and the continent's future. An injured one is an injured all of us. With that, let me officially open the floor by inviting our panelists to share their insights. We will begin with Mr. Rajab Mohandis, a member of the People's Coalition for Civil Action in South Sudan. Mr. Mohandis, in your view, what are the biggest obstacles preventing peace in South Sudan today? And by the way, Mr. Rajab is also a delegate at the Tumaini Peace Initiative. I hope you remember that Tumaini Peace Initiative is a signatory to that initiative. Mr. Tumaini, if you could take the podium here, since you are even a delegate of that Tumaini Peace Initiative in Nairobi, let's hear from you. In your honest view, what is the cause of conflict in South Sudan, and what could be a possible solution? What should the rest of Africa do to have peace in that part of Africa? The next 10 or 15 minutes are yours.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and the audience. I am delighted to join you this evening in this important conversation on the conflict in South Sudan and what the rest of Africa, in the spirit of Pan-Africa, contribute to find solutions to the situation in South Sudan. Just very briefly about our country, the Republic of South Sudan.
Let's begin with you have been a member or a delegate to the revitalized agreement on the resolution on the conflict in the Republic of South Sudan, which has been taking place in Nairobi, isn't it? Took place in Nairobi.
Well, there are two agreements, and I've been a delegate to both of them. The current agreement in the country that was signed in 2018, called the Revitalized Agreement on the Resolution of the Conflict in the Republic of South Sudan, which is in the country right
now. Is that the Nairobi agreement?
Now, the Nairobi process is called the Tumaini Peace Initiative.
Okay.
It's also called the High-Level Mediation for South Sudan under the auspices of the President of the Republic of Kenya. And it is still it's still a process. It has been adjourned, and so the delegates have dispersed from Nairobi.
Hey, they have dispersed?
Yeah. I will go back a little bit to the background that you read about South Sudan becoming independent and then relapsing into conflict. Of course, as you may be fully aware, as members of the Pan-African movement, our country became independent in 2011. And when we became independent, we were very hopeful and extremely hopeful because we became independent as a product of long, heroic struggles to get independence. And so a couple of years immediately after the independence, we had conflict in 2013, December. So we have had several agreements. So when the conflict broke out in 2013, and it is important to note this, the region to which we belong, which is the Intergovernmental Authority on Development sub-region in the Eastern Horn of Africa region, immediately convened a peace negotiation. That was way back in 2014, at the beginning of 2014, just about a month after the outbreak of the conflict. And that negotiation went on for about a year, and an agreement was signed in 2015. That agreement, signed in August 2015, was referred to as the Agreement on the Resolution of the Conflict in the Republic of South Sudan. It was mediated by IGAD in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and that agreement ended the conflict and brought to the government an arrangement, the opposition at the time. And you rightly said that the agreement, the conflict pitted the president and his former deputy at the time. So the first vice president of the country now reached an agreement with the government after that fallout, and they formed a unity government. That unity government that was formed in 2016 broke down by July 2016. So we had a new conflict. Remember, we had conflict in 2013, an agreement was reached in August 2015, and then we had a government formed, but then in July 2016, we had another round of conflict, a similar conflict, the first vice president's party and the government. And so that conflict went on, again with the support of the region and the wider international community. Peace negotiations were convened in Addis Ababa. And as civil society, we got invited to participate in that peace process. And so the negotiations went on from December 2017 to September 2018 when the agreement was signed. But very importantly for us to note, in December when the negotiations started, first component of the agreement was signed within 5 days of negotiations. And that agreement was referred to as the Agreement on Cessation of Hostilities, Protection of Civilians, and Humanitarian Access. The interest at the time was to stop the conflict protect civilians from the war, from the killings, and allow humanitarian aid workers to deliver relief to those affected by the conflict. Now that part of the agreement helped as the main negotiation continued. And this negotiation was then moved from Addis Ababa to Khartoum because Addis Ababa had a change of leadership and they had more focus on internal issues. So Khartoum took over, and that was when President Bashir was in power. And so we had the negotiation culminating in a new agreement called the current revitalized agreement on the resolution of the conflict in the Republic of South Sudan. And the implementation of this agreement has not, it brought back several other parties to the government, and in the process of implementation, the agreement has not fully delivered on its intended objectives. We can actually say that the implementation, in a way, has largely stalled. And this is partly the reason we got into the current crisis. They have always been lapses or what you may call inconsistencies in the implementation of the agreement, and several conflicts along the implementation, and also elements of violations of the implementation of the agreement. So from the beginning of this year, a few weeks ago or a couple of months back, there were what you may refer to as systematic military confrontations between forces of the government called the South Sudan People's Defense Forces and forces of that are affiliated to the first vice president, who were the armed opposition. The agreement was provided for the forces to be cantoned, meaning that they would be assembled in designated locations, and then from there they would be taken and unified in a training center. And in the process, they would be trained and graduated and deployed as unified forces. So some of those cantonment sites belonging to the forces came under attack, and those confrontations eventually led to conflicts in Juba, leading to arrests and detention of several political and military officers who were affiliated to the party of the first vice president, which is called the SPLM in opposition, or the Sudan People's Liberation Movement in opposition. So, as we speak now, the first vice president actually also got detained aside. And some of these military confrontations at some point led to also a situation where military barracks was attacked, and in an attempt to take out those who were trapped in that military barracks, a UN helicopter got involved to try to do an evacuation. The helicopter also came under attack, and people were killed in the process. And so this has raised the profile of the conflict. The region is concerned, the African sub-region is concerned, the Horn of Africa region, and also the international community. And in that regard, as we speak now, efforts are underway to ensure that there is de-escalation of the tensions in the country, and that a peaceful resolution approach is used to address these crises in the country. So that's where I would leave it at the moment with regard to your question, Mr. Speaker.
So now you can go ahead with your presentation.
Well, thank you very much. Very, very quickly and very briefly, and as I mentioned at the beginning, South Sudan is a product of long, heroic struggles, as stated in our Declaration of Independence that our struggles were for justice, freedom, equality, human dignity, and political and economic emancipation. At independence, in the Declaration of Independence, we resolved as the people of South Sudan to establish a system of governance that upholds the rule of law, justice, democracy, human rights, and respect for diversity. Unfortunately, as the speaker mentioned, at the 2 years or so after our independence, we went into conflict. This conflict, as he explained, started as a conflict in the ruling party, the party that led us to independence, called the Sudan People's Liberation Movement. And this conflict has devastated our country. It has led to serious political disagreements. It has led to economic meltdown and crisis in security and other aspects of the South Sudanese society. Now, why do we have these conflicts? There are a couple of things I would mention about this, the reasons we have these conflicts or this crisis. But first, the real crisis we have in summary include, number one, we are in a very serious violent conflict. We have these conflicts in three forms. Number one is that the parties that formed the transitional government in the country are in conflict among themselves. So they are involved in violent conflicts, in military confrontations, and in the recent conflicts, the latest round of conflicts, it involved even airstrikes and use of ground forces and all of that. So that is one aspect of the violent conflict that we have. The second aspect of the violent conflict involves armed oppositions fighting the unity government in the country. So there are armed oppositions who are not in the government who are involved in fighting the government. The third aspect of the conflict is at community levels. We have highly militarized communities, and these communities fight one another. And sometimes this fighting appear even like full-scale military confrontations. It involves automatic assault weapons, and it also causes a lot of casualties and displacements and abductions, sometimes of women and children and all of that. So these are three levels or aspects of the crisis that we have. The second situation that we have as part of the crisis in our country is that we have a fragile and fragmented unity government. The purpose of the agreement was to create a unity government that would pull our country together and help to deliver peace and build the country in all aspects of building a state. Unfortunately, the unity government is very fragile and also fragmented. It is characterized by lots of disagreements among themselves, and these disagreements impede their ability to deliver on the content of the peace agreement.
In your own assessment, my brother, because you are delegate, who is the problem? Who is fighting the agreement? Where does the problem come from?
Thank you very much.
In your own assessment.
Thank you very much. Well, one would say the agreement is designed in such a way that there are several parties that are involved in the agreement, and one party is led by the president. It is a coalition of several parties that is led by the president. We also have a party that is led by the first vice president, Dr. Riek Machar, and several other parties. So the party that is led by the president has the biggest share in the government. And by the time the other parties from the opposition, including the party of the first vice president, was getting into the government, the party that was led by the president had the authority from the agreement to manage the role or the authority of government in that. And so one would say that most of the authority, political authority, economic authority or powers, and also military powers lie mostly with the president. And we believe that part of this is used in such a way that it disables the ability of the rest to effectively participate in the process. So the disagreement, especially between the president and the first vice president, actually creates a situation of a deadlock in the...
I hear you, but I just wanted to be specific, to know where does the problem exactly emanate? Is it Dr. Riek Machar's group or it is Salvar Kiir's group? Who is the first to violate the agreement?
Thank you very much.
So that when we are looking for solution, we tell you, my brother, you are wrong here.
Thank you very much for this important question, Mr. Speaker. I would say that the president carries the biggest responsibility of the status of implementation of the peace agreement. The failure of the implementation of the peace agreement also. And so that, to my understanding, is where the major issues lie. And so if the president were to lead in a way of taking lead and providing for effective implementation, the agreement would make progress. Yeah, thank you. So that aspect of a fragile and fragmented unity government is one important aspect of the situation. The third aspect of the crisis we have is that the implementation of the peace agreement is completely stalled. In my own assessment, as a signatory to the agreement and someone who has followed this process closely.
The delegates who have been in Nairobi, they have all parted ways.
Well, let's leave the Nairobi aside, because the Nairobi peace process started and it did not reach to an agreement. So there is no agreement that emerged out of the negotiations in Nairobi. But we have the agreement that was signed in 2018. That has been the main aspect of the agreement being implemented in the country.
Good.
Yes. And so this agreement is largely stalled, and the implementation has not also delivered on the core objectives of the agreement. The agreement was designed to be implemented within the within 44 months, 8 months of pre-transitional period to organize the security sector and get the parties together, and then 3 years or 36 months of full implementation that would conclude with elections. So that makes up to 44 months of implementation of the whole agreement in the country. As we speak now, the agreement has been implemented for about 78 months, and only a very small portion of it has been implemented. Some say 10%, others say 27% has been implemented.
27%?
Yes, roughly.
After 78 months?
Yes, after 78 months when it was supposed to be 44 months. And so in that regard, we can say confidently that the agreement has actually stalled, and it has become part of the problem in the country. That it's not delivering peace, and it has stagnated progress in all aspects of the country. So that is that's another major challenge that we have. So why do we have?
The entire agreement was supposed to be implemented
within 44 months. Yes, and it is now 78 months, and the implementation has not delivered. So why do we have this crisis? One, of course, we believe that, or I believe as a citizen, that there is no clear political vision for the country, no clear political direction, and there is also no clear political program that is being implemented. And so without clear political direction and political program, we find ourselves in this situation where there is a stagnation, there are conflicts, and there are challenges that come around in the country. That is one. The second is the violent struggle for power. When we became independent in 2011, we had two important agenda items in our constitution. One was to write a permanent constitution between 2011, when we became independent, and 2013, that we would have had a permanent constitution developed. The second was for us to to conduct elections by 2015. So elections were scheduled for 2015, 4 years after our independence. That means we would have a constitution, and then we would have an election. That was from 2011, July 2011, that commitment was made. And as we speak now, it is March 2025. We just...
Elections were supposed to be conducted
in 2015.
2015?
Yes, the first elections. And we were supposed to have a constitution by 2013. So as we speak now, we have not developed the constitution, and we have not conducted the elections. We just commemorated our 13th anniversary of independence last year, and we're expecting to do so, the 14th anniversary, in a couple of months from now. So now, without elections, guided by a constitution, a people-centered constitution, power is accessed violently. So people fight in order to get to power. So what usually happens is that when I want to get to power, you create a problem, you create a group, you go fight, and then you are called for a negotiation, and then you access power. So this violent struggle for power in itself is one of the reasons why we have this crisis in our country. Yes. So then the other...
Before you go to another point, my brother, how many rebel groups roughly do you have in South Sudan? In Congo, you know there are over 200 rebel groups. I even stopped counting. Over 200 rebel groups in Congo. I am not so sure of how many are in South Sudan.
Well,
you know the faction of Riek Machar and the...
No. Yeah, we have about a dozen.
A dozen rebel groups.
Yes, who are not currently in the peace agreement. So
this peace agreement did not cater for them.
They were, most of them were not there by the time the agreement was negotiated. Maybe let me go back a little bit. When the first conflict...
Let's have one speaker.
When the first conflict erupted in 2013, there were only two parties. The opposition group, armed opposition led by Dr. Riek Machar, and then the government. So there were two antagonists who were taken to to Addis to negotiate peace. Then that agreement was signed with only two. Now after that, we then had several...
That's why they call themselves SPLM in opposition.
Yes, so there was SPLM government in Juba, and then another SPLM group in opposition. Yes. It is the party that is split. And the SPLM was made up of two components. There was a political component called the SPLM. There was a military component called the SPLA. So the army, the movement, which was the party, and the army, which was the SPLA. Now, these two institutions split. Crisis that led to a split in the political movement led also to a split in the army. So one became
in opposition.
Yes.
So they start two of them to agree.
Yes.
Now after the agreement, these groups also started forming up.
Yes. Correct. So the first agreement, when it collapsed in July 2016, another round of peace negotiations were convened, and then it led to first of all those groups that emerged were pulled together to participate in the process to lead to the agreement. Some of them did not sign this current agreement that was signed in 2018, and others formed themselves after that agreement was signed. So we have so many armed groups, armed opposition groups, also unarmed opposition groups. So the opposition groups keep forming themselves almost all the time. Then we have this situation. Part of the crisis we have is because we have a political stalemate in the country. The political stalemate is the stagnation, where we are unable to produce a constitution, we are unable to conduct elections, we are unable to revamp the economy and all of that. So there is total political stagnation that affects all the sectors. And then the other aspect, another reason we have that causes us to be in crisis is actually the lack of implementation of peace agreements. We usually do not implement.
I can say failure to implement the peace agreements.
Yes, failure to implement peace agreements.
Because they're using diplomatic language.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we have had several agreements since the comprehensive peace agreement that led to our independence. That agreement was partially implemented, but fortunately it led to our independence. And then we have had several other agreements that were not all implemented, including the one in the country right now. Now, the other aspect, the other reason that causes us to be in problems is the lack of respect for constitutionalism. And also the issue of violations of constitutions and the agreement. Maybe let me have my bottle of water.
So, lack of respect for
Constitution, but there's no
constitution
constitution.
on the side of the ruling government.
Yes, the parties that are in power. Now, you are asking which constitution?
Yeah.
At independence, when we were becoming independent,
Yes.
South Sudan was actually a semi-autonomous region of the Sudan. Now, there were two constitutions governing us in the South, too. One was the interim constitution of the Republic of the Sudan. The second was the interim constitution of Southern Sudan. So our sub-region had an interim constitution. So when we were becoming independent, you know, we voted for independence. We voted in the referendum in January 2011, January. And the results were announced in February. And the agreement said 6 months after the declaration of the results, South Sudan would become independent. So,
With the other constitution that was...
So, yes, that's what I'm explaining. So we had those two constitutions, but in the South, we were governed, of course, the two constitutions were governing us. And the interim constitution of Southern Sudan was then reviewed to usher us into independence, to become our constitution for independence. And it was called the Transitional Constitution of the Republic of South Sudan, 2011. So it was the document that ushered us into independence. But from the Transitional Constitution, we committed to write a permanent constitution. The permanent constitution has not been written. So this transitional constitution stands as the law of the land, the formal law of the land. However, its implementation is not consistent. So we violate the constitution that we have, the transitional constitution. We also violate the agreements. So this lack of respect for the constitution and the agreements is part of the reason we have this crisis in our country. The other reason is that for some reason we ethnicize, the political leaders ethnicize politics. They ethnicize and militarize politics. So you find that most of the political parties have military wings. For example, the party of the first vice president and several other parties in the government have military wings. So politics is militarized. Politics is also ethnicized. like mobilization for the parties, for the violence, for the conflicts, are done on ethnic basis. I go to my community and say, we are under attack, and so I mobilize my community to be part of it.
But my brother, even beyond that, don't you think you started ethnicizing politics when you said the other Sudanese in the north are Arabs, for us here we are Catholics? Don't you think you started that?
Now, this was a colonial setup. During the colonial...
Why the colonial setup?
We can explain that as South Sudanese, because when we were under colonial authorities,
at first we were one Sudan.
Yes.
Then you started saying, those from the north pray to Allah. For us here in the south, we pray to God. I don't know, the other one is Allah, this one is what? It's God. And that formed a basis for you to feel you are different. Now, once you came down here in the south, thinking now you are one south, who prays to God only. Now you start to say, but this one has a long nose, this one has a short nose, this one is red, this one is... Don't you think that the problem also starts with you from the time?
Now,
you said we are different from the northern.
Ours was a reaction. Ours was a reaction to marginalization. Governance was centered in Khartoum. The rest of the people were not treated as part of the Sudan.
Oh.
Until the colonialists left, government was left in the hands of those in Khartoum. The rest of the peripheries were not involved in government.
You were followers. You were supposed to follow.
Absolutely. And then there were policies, formal government policies, of to try to, first of all, what they say, Arabize the south, the rest of the country. Officially Sudan was declared as an Arab country. So we, sitting here who are not Arabs, were defined as Arabs. And that was one thing we rejected. It did not emanate from us, but we were supposed to be forcefully transformed into what we are not. So we reacted.
You simply responded.
We simply responded. Number two, the state adopted a religion. And while we felt that each one should feel free to worship anything they wanted to worship, and majority of us in the south chose to worship the Christian God, we were being forcefully pushed to worship God that we did not ascribe to. Yes. So we felt that religion and the state should be separate. So those were some of the crises, the differences we had. And that people should participate in government not on the basis of religion and on the basis of the identity, this Arab identity, but it should be on the basis of nationality. I am a Sudanese nationality, and national, I must participate as such. So that was the reason for the grudge. And when we asked for all of these things to be done right, this did not work out. So then secession became an alternative. Inevitable. Yes, in fact, inevitable. In fact, in the comprehensive peace agreement that was signed in Addis Ababa, in Nairobi in 2005, the first protocol of what they call the Machakos protocols said the parties agreed to make unity attractive. Making unity attractive meant that you would do what would make the country appear the same for all citizens. Create equal opportunity for all citizens, yes. And then they also agreed that the people of South Sudan had the right to self-determination, which means that if unity was not made attractive, and then the alternative becomes attractive. So that was what happened. So it was not the Southerners who started agitating and creating ethnicity in Sudan, but they were simply reacting to a negative situation. So those were quite a number of the issues that we've had in our country. And in the interest of time, maybe I will limit that. But then, talk briefly about what we think should be done, what I think should be done. First, in the situation of a political stalemate like what we have in the country right now, and a fragile and a fragmented unity government, we think that a fragmented unity government can only fragment the rest of the country. And so there is need to unite the country. And for us to unite the country, we need a process. And the agreement, the political agreement in the country, the revitalized agreement on the resolution of the conflict in the Republic of South Sudan is no longer a viable political framework in our view. And so on that note, I would recommend that there should be a process for the rest of you, the rest of Africa, to help us to come together in what we would call an inclusive national political process or dialogue, to be able to sit like this as South Sudanese from all the sectors, those in the agreement, those fighting, those in the agreement, and the civic groups, the civic groups, say the religious leaders, the women, youth, civil society, and so forth, should all come together and have a comprehensive program. In other words, first of all, appreciate the fact that we have a crisis, that we have a stalemate in the country right now, and therefore there is need for us to agree on how we take the country out of this crisis.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Speaker. I think presentation of Rajab has made my work very easy because he narrated what was happening and what's happening now. So my work is going to be very easy to explain why that happening, why we have so many militias, why we have people that present themselves in a military form to express their political idea or objective. My presentation, I think, I will take the small brief of the history, especially of what they have talked about now, of dividing the Sudan. By then, South Sudan was a part of Sudan region. I think the policy of the British administration by then was isolate South Sudan as a region, as they have created policy of called closed districts order, to make South Sudan as a region is isolated from the other part of North Sudan, where development was taking place, especially in North Sudan or Central Sudan, where there is the most mass development than North, than South, especially the roads, the economic project, all those things that's taken in North, but the South was so isolated. There was no road, there was no any project for development. So that why Southern by then was so marginalized society. And then what makes the things are that is there is a difference of culture, of course. Most of the people who are in North, they have different cultural backgrounds than the people in South. That is another part of, another dimension of the issue. But the issue are two. The other is the economic part, the other also is part of the identity also a part. Most people they talked about as identity alone, not this also has also development aspect of it, like the people of North Sudan or Central Sudan, where the central government was so much development than the people of North. When the Sudan took his independence, 1965, the ruling class, which has taken over the power of Sudan from the British, has continued the same policy of the colonial, which has made the power, the Southern as a marginalized part, and they are not treated the Southern equally like the North. So that's why it makes the Southern resist that policy. They resist in form of armed struggle or militarized That's why there is a two important movement in South Sudan, Anyanya, that is one by 1950 something, and SPLA 1983. So that one was how Southerners rebelled themselves, that is, they demanding justice, they demand equality. We have to treat us equally. But most of the demand of South by then was we need to govern ourselves. There is a different form. There are people who are calling for federation, there are people who are calling for self-autonomy. The other political party was calling for separation by then. In 1972, the Anyanya have reached agreement between with the central government of Sudan, where they give South Sudan as a regional autonomy for almost 9 years, and then 11 years, and then the agreement collapsed, and then SPLA came out, and then they struggled for 23 years, and then they got also an agreement with with the central government of 2005, it is New Fascia. But both agreements have created like some project in South, limited, not, but also Southern elite also has a part of the problem, because they have not get a chance of development South in that area, in that time. They have also get busy to reach themselves and fight the position. They have created a little project which could be like one university and some of the ministry building and like 2 or 3 project of development. But South Sudan as a region is still being marginalized. People in the village, they have no access to modern life, they have no access to service. In 2005, after New Fascia peace agreement, which gives the South Sudan autonomy, like my colleague here Rajab talked about, that autonomy has given, South Sudan has oil. That oil was not used to benefit of the people of South Sudan. The SPLA leaders, they still continue the same policy of Anyanya, is to reach themselves as a leader and not to build South Sudan. After South Sudan got independent in 2011, the SPLA, which was the ruling class up to now, I think by then they don't have project of national building. Like Nyerere says that is for the liberation movement, they have to answer 2 questions: nation building or development. The SPLA have none of them to build, to make South Sudan as different tribes to come as one, to build social cohesion between the tribes, and also development. I speak to now, up to now, the small products in South Sudan, they exported from outside, tomato, onion, also. So they're relying on the donors, on the foreigners, on the organization to provide the basic need of the society. So I think that is the general explanation. That's why the problem of South Sudan, of that tension between 2 parties, and why they always present themselves in the army struggle or armed conflicts. Because when you look at the history, for the Southern to get hurt, they have to present themselves in military action. Not like North. North, they have the more development. People present themselves in the trade union, in political party. But in Southern, if you want to be hurt, you have to use only the military form. Let me go straight to the point why we have was the causes of violence. Why we have so many violence. That is, when you hear news about South Sudan, the first things people will hear about that is there is a war in South Sudan. There are so many reasons that why in South Sudan we have so many violence. So endless war cannot finish. If the war is stopped, we have peace agreement, and then the peace agreement collapses, and then we go to war again. One of the causes is the power struggle. Why the political actor in South Sudan, they struggle for power. In South Sudan, there is no productive economic, where a country has factories, and so for you to get rich, you have to have a relationship with people in power. So the power is means of getting wealth in South Sudan. So that's why most of the political actors, they fight for the power to get access to the wealth, because if you're not in power, you're not getting access to the wealth. You get through high salary, you get by so many means you get wealth, you get so many rich by when you become so that why the struggle for power has been there in South Sudan, because that is the only means of people who want to get rich, like Mr. Omo was speaking there. The guest was in Africa to get rich is to join African politics. In South Sudan, that is the only way to get rich is to go to the power, struggle for power. The other thing is the SPLA as a guerrilla movement or liberation movement actually has failed to transform itself from the guerrilla movement to the ruling party. Like I speak to you now, the SPLA, like the leader of SPLA in particular region, is the same is a leader, is the head of the party. Is also has a high rank in the army. So the SPLA has not defined that is a real party. Like in Uganda here, people who are actually doing politics are not chaotic with army. In South Sudan, no, there are people who are in army, who are leading community, have all those positions. Like the SPLA itself is making the country in fragile, because it's complicating the issue in terms of the political setting. There is also a limited security of government. Why we have so many militias? We have white army, we have Air Boys, we have.
You also have Arab boys there?
Yeah.
We have Arab boys here
Yeah.
in Sorot. They shift from Sorot to South Sudan.
They are there.
You have Arab boys there?
Yeah, they are there.
Ask Captain Mike Mukura whether he has
There are so many like Agulek. There are so many militias. Mostly of them, they protect the cows. Like White Army, they also protect the cows, because in the local level there is no government. Like there is no police. There is no. So you have to create militia to protect your.
police is ineffective there.
Yeah, it's not bad. There's limit in some towns, but in village there's no any presence of the government security. So people, they create militia to protect themselves or to protect their wealth, like their cows. In terms of the farmers, they protect that is their farmers, because the pastoralists also, they have militias. They come and attack your farms and destroy your crops if you're not equipment. There are so many. Those militias actually, when war happened in Juba, they allies with the warring party. Like White Army, they usually allies with Riek Machar. The Galwing in Warab, they always allies with Kiir. So they get allies with the people who are fighting in central government. So that's why we always having militias, so many militias. That's why create the source of conflicts been there all those time. And there is I think high level of poverty. I mean, as the people there in the village, they have nothing to eat. They have nothing. So there is only way of joining army to get that to survive. The important cause is, I think, let me elaborate more in that there is a failure of intervention to resolve conflicts, especially IGAD. IGAD modelized for peace conflicts, peace resolution in Sudan. They create the power sharing modality. That is, the big people, they have to come and accommodate themselves in power, especially people who have more troops, have big muscles. They have to join them and then create them in the government. So that is the only solution. IGAD thinks that it will create peace. I think that modality has failed. 2016, the IG and IO, they fought and peace collapsed. Now, it's the same thing. Why there is a problem is that those two parties or those two people or two groups, which you accommodate them in power, they will use the power to get to recruit more soldiers, to get more weapons, to buy more people, so they can maintain their interest in power. So there is no way that the only solution for peace agreement is to bring those people together. Because the small misunderstanding, like what happened, what makes the peace collapse in 2016 was a small misunderstanding. But both of them, they were too strong. So they turned the misunderstanding to conflict. Now, I think the IO has become more weak because they have so many armed group got defection from them, from the Riek Machar. So Kiir thinking that this is time for him to get out, to get rid of Machar, because now Machar is so weak. So that's why when the small misunderstanding happened between those two parties, it turned to be conflict. So that modality of power sharing, which is God used it for peace resolution in Sudan, is totally failing, and it's not working at all. It actually makes the country hostage for two people who have more armies and troops. The final one, the solution. One of the solution, to my point, is grassroots approach for peace process. We have to have grassroots approach to have peace. Those community, which is Riek and Machar, been used, hijack their name to fight. Actually, no one heard about the problem. They are the Dinka and where they have same problem. They don't have schools, they don't have hospitals, they don't have food, they don't have economic project to make the people work. So they have the same project, they have the same problem, but the elite which hijack their voice, they are creating that the problem is we have less people in government. We have to be presenting by more ministry, more vice president. So that is like you have to have peace process, which is make the people listen to the people in the ground, and that peace process has to based on the correct understanding of the conflict. And the correct understanding of conflict is tackle the economic and social economic backward of South Sudan, not sharing power. If people are there suffering so many problems, you have to go and listen to them to know what they look at. The final point is the political groups who are engaging for change. They have to come together and create common ground between them, and that is what makes them achieving some point. They work together and then they go ahead to achieve change. Because if the country is still in the same point, of same hand of the people, we're still going to have the same process, the same problem, the same tension. Every 2 years, Machar reacts, they have problem and they fight, people will fear, and the East Africa, IGAD, send envoy, we will be the same series of the problem.
Thank you, Masini. Thank you, my brother. It was only one house, one family that agreed on how to live.
One family with a lot of weapons.
Yes, but they did not consider the other people. So immediately they started agreeing. Over 12 more groups came up. That's why he said we have over a dozen rebel groups. Now, those a dozen rebel groups are not in this agreement. They are not there. You didn't take care of them. These are serious issues.
So you see also he pointed about those rebel groups, because basically those rebel groups, we can say that they need to be in this peace agreement, otherwise we won't have peace. That sounds logical, right? However, as Pan-African we do know, and it's also been explained to us, that then you open the door for more rebel groups, right? There were one Sudan, there were one problem, it was called South Sudan. Now there is two Sudan, one is called Sudan, the other one is called South Sudan, we have two problems. And as you said also, how long are we going to continue to divide? Because the more we divide, the more we include people in peace agreement, the more we include people in peace agreement, the more they want to be divided. But our brothers said it straight. The Dinkas, the Nuers, the South Sudanese in general, they have the same issues. And their issues is not so much about Salvar Kiir or Machar. The issues is about what do you eat. The issues is how do you get the fertilizer to develop your farm. The issues is which school do you send your kids. They are the same issues. People have similar issues.
Thank you, Comrade Thomas and Safri, our usual suspect here. And Comrade Addison. My name is Andrew Lumbagafsel, your speaker. Watch this show Saturday on television from 4 to 5 p.m. And of course, another version will be on our YouTube channel, the Pan-African Pyramids. Follow us on our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, Pan-African Pyramid, and Andrew Ilumba and the Spy Uganda.